You know, it's a really good thing that Prime Minister Mark Carney has said we're going to reach our goal of spending 2% of GDP on the armed forces by the end of this budget year. That's something that not even Stephen Harper came close to doing. So it's a good thing as far as it goes. I always worry with the Liberals that they're fudging the numbers. They wanted one time, when Trudeau was the Prime Minister still, they were going to reach the 2% of GDP by building infrastructure in the Arctic that had very little to do with the military. It could be used by the military during an emergency, but it wasn't technically military spending. But they were going to include it so they could get to that magic 2% number. So we'll see when the details come out just where the devils are in what Mark Carney has proposed, but it is at least a good step in the right direction. But it brings up another issue. I had a conversation with a woman I know who has lots and lots of acquaintances in the senior military in Canada, either current or retired. And she said they all say the same thing to her. How come we can't keep our young recruits? Someone will come in, they'll get good IT training, and then they'll move on to the private sector. Some of them will come in, they'll get good, for instance, demolition training, and then they'll move on to the private sector. Some of that's understandable. The people get good opportunities outside the armed forces, and they decide they're going to move on. But I can tell you, I think there are two things that are holding back our armed forces. One is diversity, equality, and inclusion, DEI, political correctness, wokeness. One of the things that the Canadian Armed Forces has decided it needs to do in order to attract a more diverse group of people to become soldiers, sailors, and air personnel, they must be more inclusive. They must have training to prevent people from having white supremacist, white nationalist, white privilege in their actions. That just puts people off. I think that puts people off from non-white or groups as well. I just think it's one of those things that makes sense to really senior people in their social circles, but it doesn't make sense to anybody else. And that's number one. And the second thing is, we don't give our armed forces anything to do. Here you are taking training, which can be very, very difficult training, basically on how to quell situations in hotspots around the world, make Canada safer, deal with our enemies, foreign, across the world, and yet we don't send them out on missions. In the entire 10 years that Trudeau was Prime Minister, our armed forces went on one peacekeeping mission. Now, you remember in the 2015 election, he mocked the Conservatives for not having kept up Canada's tradition of peacekeeping. He sent our armed forces out on far fewer peacekeeping missions than the Conservatives did. They don't have anything to do. 3 years ago, when there was a huge earthquake in Syria, we have two of the best mobile hospitals in the world. They're packed up, ready to go at a moment's notice. We don't have planes to get them to where they need to go all the time, so we sometimes have to rent from another military. But nonetheless, we have these great military hospitals. They're called DARTs. We didn't send them. We don't deploy to Haiti. We were asked by the Americans, could we please send a force to Haiti to try and keep it from slipping into a gang civil war, which is where it's at now. We had to say, sorry, we can't do that. During the Operation Desert Storm, when we were asked to provide ships, we did provide ships, but we had to go to the military museum to get the old deck guns that were on display at the museum and mount them on the ship. If we want that 2% of GDP to mean something, we have got to give our armed forces things to do. Spend the money buying equipment that can then be used in overseas missions. It's really not that hard to figure out. You ask people to sacrifice for their country, to spend months away from their families, and then you don't give them anything to do. That, I think, is the next big step in rehabilitating our military. For Postmedia, I'm Lorne Gunter.